Now, welcome to See the Stories. It is the signature segment of the 3-Hour News Show as always. We always have something special for you, and because we are on the very first day of the ASEAN Summit, right? We have something special, of course, already. We've been feeding you, live updates from Labuan Bajo.
As well.
That is right. And the Indonesian Foreign Affairs Ministry has selected several members of the youth to become ASEAN Youth Ambassadors as part of attempts to promote the region, including its agenda to widen the community. The Foreign Affairs Ministry, in collaboration with ASEAN Youth Ambassadors, are attempting to promote the region through various activities, and dozens of ASEAN Youth Ambassadors for Indonesia took part in various international issues that address the youth, as well as collaborating with 57 ASEAN study centers in various universities in the country and with their home governments.
The youth play an important role in promoting ASEAN because they make up 30% of ASEAN's 628 million population.
And of course, we want to know what this role entails. We now have in the studio one of the ASEAN Youth Ambassadors for Indonesia, Muhammad Iqbal Darmawan. Hi, Iqbal.
Hi, Iqbal. How are you?
It's a
pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy that I'm matching your color today.
Yeah, it's Earth Tone Day.
Brown looks good on the Indonesian skin tone.
I agree.
Totally.
So Iqbal, straight away, thank you for being here. So you were selected as one of the ASEAN Youth Ambassadors. Which year was that? And how long have you been?
Okay, so it was actually, I was named after ASEAN Youth Ambassador in 2019.
Just before the pandemic.
I see.
Right, just before the pandemic.
So it's been like the 4th year.
Yeah, it's been 4 years.
4 years.
I've been reigning as the ASEAN Youth Ambassador for Indonesia. Hopefully next year there will be another competition of ASEAN Youth Ambassador.
So it's going to be 5 years for each ambassador.
Yeah, 5 years for each ambassador.
So just out of curiosity, aren't you supposed to be there? So okay, that was like so you were chosen and you will be for 4 years time.
No, actually, initially, it was only 1 year period.
Okay.
But because at that time, we had COVID-19.
I see. So it's delayed.
So it was a delayed competition.
It was like Apnon, yeah?
Yeah, it's similar.
The 2019 ambassador reigned for 4 years. Good on you, Iqbal. Good on you.
And experiences. All right, so what are your official duties as an ASEAN Youth Ambassador? Because we're curious if like youth out there want to join the competition.
So of course, as ASEAN Youth Ambassador for Indonesia, we were actually expected to help the government, specifically the ASEAN government, to disseminate the ASEAN, not only the cultures, the knowledge and all of the programs that we have for the communities or the youths can be equally disseminated in Indonesia, so that a lot of youths can actually understand of what ASEAN role is and what can they get from the ASEAN organization itself. Because when I was reigning as the ASEAN Youth Ambassador since in 2019, I see a lot of our younger generations, they know actually about ASEAN, but they do not know about the programs, they do not know about the activities that we do, which actually can give them a lot of exposure, not only in terms of knowledge, but at the same time also like other experiences where they can actually gather and share experiences with other ASEAN youths in ASEAN within itself. So
I mean, so far we know that the ASEAN building is in Jakarta, and of course everybody knows that. So there is no way that no one knows what ASEAN is. But very interestingly, after taking up the role, right? What experiences have you found? Because it must be great, especially because you had the privilege to reign for 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Can you tell us about the important events?
Such a long time.
Yeah, can you tell us about the important events and your highlights and experience in this past 3 to 4 years?
Okay, so I'm actually being grateful of ASEAN Youth Ambassador for Indonesia because I can access all of these activities where it was shared by the Ministry of our Foreign Affairs. So I was lucky enough to join several programs such as ASEAN Interfaith Camp. I was also happy to share with you guys that I was one of the delegates for Biodemocracy Forum in 2019.
Nice.
We also had the chance to join the ASEAN Youth Diplomacy in the recent years.
Yeah.
So a lot of programs that actually I've been joining within my reign as ASEAN Youth Ambassador. But I think one of my highlights of becoming ASEAN Youth Ambassador was when I went to this small areas of Indonesia. So I was privileged enough to have this program with my fellow ASEAN Youth Ambassador to actually go to like small villages to teach about ASEAN. And it was I was really happy to see that all of these kids, all of these youths in these small areas are actually understand and very enthusiastic in learning more about ASEAN. And to be able to maybe in the future also have this relationship with the other ASEAN youth from within the ASEAN regions itself. So yeah, I think that was one of the highlights and the most rewarding moment when I can see all of those kids are like smiling and happy with all of these programs from ASEAN Youth Ambassadors.
That's good to represent.
Was it the most impressive experience that you just mentioned to us?
Yeah, it was very impressive, but at the same time, it was very touching because, maybe if we talk about ASEAN within itself, like we can only see that, the big cities, like the pictures of like Jakarta, of like maybe Kuala Lumpur or like other big cities in ASEAN itself. But a lot of, many times we forget to mention all of those small part of the regions, which can also, contributes to the development of the economic. These youths in these regions also takes a huge roles in taking ASEAN into the epicentrum of growth, as we also mentioned earlier too, right? Where we expected to have more growth in economics because although, internationally, we were very like haunted with this, like recession and like the growth of the economics are actually going down. But seeing the potential in ASEAN within itself, we can see that there is, chances of our economic to even grow bigger because our annual report, like last year, we actually expected to have like a bigger economic growth compared to the international growth itself. So
what I found very interesting is that one of your highlights was you were going to these rural areas, right? Can you tell us on what are the things that you usually promote inside of the country? Because I understand that you've mentioned before that I'm here to promote ASEAN, which is great. ASEAN is such, ASEAN is such a, as mentioned before, it's going to be a big epicenter of growth. And as you know, as an Indonesian ambassador, Indonesia seems to be very deeply affiliated in ASEAN. So I think Indonesians have to know what it is. So what are the aspects of ASEAN that you promote with the youth that you meet in Indonesia before we go international?
Oh, okay. So basically to love ASEAN, we need to love the cultures within ourselves. And I think starting from the cultures, we can we can like trigger this interest specifically for those younger generations that, ASEAN is so beautiful. Like we have so much diversity, but at the same time, we have so much similarities in terms of cultures. Like we talk about Malay people, we are very similar to the Malay cultures. In terms of food itself, so I was lucky enough to travel in some ASEAN countries, and where I was there, I actually found a lot of foods are very similar to Indonesia.
The spices are also similar.
Which ones are your favorites?
I think my favorite would definitely in Thailand. So, so there is this similar to kolak, but then they call it
Thailand dessert.
Thailand dessert, like it's very similar to kolak. And then there's also I don't know, there's a dessert called tongyot, which is very similar to wajik, in Indonesia.
Yes.
Things, but at the same time, also similarities. I think the first thing that I teach them is that although we are different, but we have so much similarities.
Something in common, right?
Something in common that we need to celebrate it.
And I wanted to ask, what are the areas in Indonesia, the rural areas that you have visited to?
Okay,
to talk about ASEAN.
Right. So the first thing that I went was in my region in East Java. So actually came from a very small village too. So I was lucky enough to pursue my career and my educations here in Jakarta. So I think when I was reign as ASEAN Youth Ambassador, one of my biggest program was to actually go back to my region and to actually teach this knowledge to all of the youths in my region. Because at that time, I was offering a program called ASEAN Shanti, where we actually try to integrate ASEAN into the curriculum of our education system, so that we can learn more about ASEAN. We can have this sense of belonging deeper to ASEAN. Because if things happen, I think the first person to help us is our neighbors, and
Yes,
this
I
case,
agree.
ASEAN is our
It's a very Indonesian motto.
Yeah.
right.
All right. Well, there's one thing that I want to highlight. You mentioned that one of the highlights was being able to share that although we are different, that there is still a sense of belonging, there are a lot of similarities.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the changes that you've experienced while teaching these things? Because we talk a lot about inclusivity, which means that, right? That although we are diverse, we are still one group. We're one group of Southeast Asian countries, and we have a lot of similarities. So what were the responses of the kids that you meet when you tell them that, look, Indonesia is part of a greater community?
Yes.
That is something, is that something to be proud of, or what? How do they respond to you when you tell them about that?
Wow, that was, there is also a fun fact that I would like to share with you guys. So when I visited all of these places, I also invite some of my ASEAN friends.
Okay.
So they happened to be in Indonesia at that time, and I said, oh, let's just create this program where we visit this place, and I invite some of my ASEAN friends from Malaysia and also from the Philippines to share, a little bit of their traditional dance, their, what is it, their traditional national language. So it was really fun to see all of these kids dancing together in the traditional Filipinos and also Malaysian dance, and also learning the foods, the languages as well. So I think at least they learn it from the people themselves, that actually ASEAN cultures is so diverse but also similar in a way, and to see them happy and have this enjoyments to do that was very rewarding. So it was really nice.
Very rich in culture.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna continue the talk after the break, so don't go anywhere. Stay here only on the Cheroni Show on See Today.